I stepped into the glittering Dawson estate, expecting a night of celebration for my brother Ethan's engagement, only to find myself shoved behind the bar, like some uninvited guest who didn't belong. The sting of that moment hit me like a cold wave crashing over me. I'm Emily Harper, 35, the CEO of Horizon Innovations, a Seattle-based AI company I built from the ground up with nothing but grit and sleepless nights. I'd just signed a $25 million contract with Dawson Properties, the company owned by my brother's future father-in-law, James Dawson. You'd think that'd earn me a seat at the family table. Right, wrong. My own family. The people who've known me my whole life, and my brother's fiancée, Claire, decided I was better suited next to the bartenders than with the VIPs. Can you imagine the gut punch of that being invisible in a room full of people who should see you the most? Let me take you back to that night at the Dawson estate on Bainbridge Island, where the air smelled of fresh-cut roses and sea salt from Puget Sound. I'd come with hope, maybe even a little naivety, thinking this engagement party could mend the cracks in my relationship with my family. Ethan, my younger brother by 2 years, and I hadn't been close in ages, not since we were kids racing bikes through Discovery Park. My parents, Judith and Robert Harper, always had a way of shining their spotlight on him, leaving me in the shadows. But this night, I thought, could be different. I'd worked hard, built a company valued at over $200 million, and signed a game-changing deal with James Dawson himself. Surely they'd see me now. Surely they'd finally get it. I walked in, wearing a tailored red dress, chosen to scream confidence without saying a word. My best friend and business advisor, Lila Nguyen, was by my side, her presence grounding me in a sea of unfamiliar faces. The estate was a vision crystal chandeliers sparkling above, jazz music floating from a live band, and guests in designer suits and gowns clinking champagne flutes. I scanned the crowd, expecting to spot my parents or Ethan, maybe even a nod of acknowledgement. Instead, I got a tight-lipped smile from Claire, Ethan's fiancée, her eyes flicking over me like I was an afterthought. "Oh, Emily, you made it," she said, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite place pity. Maybe, or amusement. That's when I felt the first prickle of unease, like a storm brewing just out of sight. Have you ever walked into a room where you're supposed to belong, only to feel like you're not even there? Like your presence is an inconvenience. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from today. Hit that like button if you've ever felt overlooked. And if you're new here, subscribe to hear more stories about standing up when it counts. Because that night, I was about to learn just how far my family would go to keep me in the shadows, and how brightly I could shine when I decided I'd had enough. Growing up in Seattle, Ethan and I were two peas in a pod, inseparable as kids. We'd spend summer afternoons racing through Discovery Park, weaving between towering evergreens, our laughter echoing off the cliffs overlooking Puget Sound. Winter meant piling onto a single sled, hurtling down the snowy hills of Queen Anne, our cheeks red from the cold. Our mom, Judith, would pack us matching peanut butter sandwiches, and Dad, Robert, taught us both how to cast a line into Lake Washington, cheering when we'd reel in a trout. Those days felt like they'd last forever. Simple, warm, unbroken, but like a tide pulling back, things started to shift. So slowly I barely noticed at first. By high school, the cracks were impossible to ignore. Ethan, with his easy charm and killer jump shot, became the star of the Roosevelt High basketball team. Mom and Dad were at every game, cheering from the bleachers, their voices hoarse with pride. That's my boy Dad would bellow, slapping Ethan's back after a win. Me, I was the quiet one, holed up in the computer lab, coding my first programs, or dominating the mathlete competitions. I'd spend hours perfecting algorithms, my fingers flying over the keyboard like it was a piano. But when I won nationals for a coding project at 16, my parents were nowhere to be found. Something came up, Mom said over the phone, her voice distracted. We'll celebrate soon. Honey, soon never came. Instead, Dad would say, basketball builds character. Emily, that computer stuff. It's just a phase. It wasn't a phase. I earned a full ride to Stanford, diving headfirst into computer science, while Ethan coasted into the University of Washington on a partial athletic scholarship. At family dinners, the table buzzed with stories of Ethan's frat parties or his game-winning shots, my straight A semesters, my internships at Silicon Valley startups. They got a polite nod, maybe a "that's nice, dear," before someone changed the subject to Ethan's latest triumph. It was like I was shouting into a void, my voice swallowed by their indifference. I'd sit there, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate, wondering why my wins never seemed to matter. After college, I moved back to Seattle, determined to make my mark. Ethan. He slid right into Harper Realty, the family business Dad had taken over from Grandpa. No questions asked, no resume, needed just a corner office and a title handed to him on a silver platter. It's about real-world experience, Mom explained when I dared to point out Ethan's C-average business degree. He's got the instincts for it. Instincts. That word stung like salt in a cut. Meanwhile, I was grinding 80-hour weeks at a tech startup in Pioneer Square, soaking up everything I could about AI and business. Every late night, every skipped meal, every rejection from investors who smirked at the girl with big ideas, it all fueled me. I wasn't just building a career. I was building myself, brick by brick, in a world that kept trying to push me aside. Looking back, I see it so clearly now, the pattern, like a map drawn in invisible ink. Ethan was the golden child, the one who fit the mold of what my parents thought success looked like. I was the odd one out, the daughter who dared to dream in code instead of contracts. And yet, I kept hoping they'd see me, that one day they'd look at me the way they looked at him. That hope carried me all the way to Ethan's engagement party, where I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally understand who I'd become. But hope, I learned, can be a dangerous thing when it's placed in the wrong hands. I was 27 when I took the leap that changed everything, with $10,000 scraped together from savings, a small business loan, and a stubborn belief in myself. I founded Horizon Innovations in a cramped studio apartment in Seattle's Capitol Hill. My desk was a folding table, my bed a pull-out couch, and my diet instant noodles and black coffee, day after day. I didn't care. Every line of code I wrote, every pitch I crafted, felt like carving my name into the world. Horizon wasn't just a company, it was my defiance, my proof that I didn't need anyone's approval to make it. The first 2 years were brutal. I'd code until my eyes burned, pitch to investors who'd raise an eyebrow at my age or gender, and hear the same tired lines. You're too young to lead a tech company, or AI's a man's game. Sweetheart. Sweetheart. That word lit a fire in me. I taught myself machine learning, studied supply chain logistics, and built a team of misfits, brilliant coders and dreamers who believed in Horizon's vision AI that could streamline business operations, cut costs, and outsmart the competition. We worked out of a shared office in Pioneer Square, surrounded by exposed brick walls and the hum of ambition. Failure wasn't an option, it was a dare. Then came the breakthrough, Our AI platform, designed to optimize complex supply chains, caught the eye of a major retailer. They signed a $5 million contract. And suddenly, Horizon wasn't just a startup, it was a player. More deals followed, each bigger than the last. By 35, I'd grown Horizon into a company valued at over $200 million, with 70 employees and a sleek office overlooking Elliott Bay. The pinnacle, a $25 million contract with Dawson Properties, the real estate giant owned by James Dawson, my brother Ethan's future father-in-law. Their VP of Operations, Sarah Mitchell, found us at a tech conference in San Francisco, where I'd presented our platform. She didn't know I was Ethan's sister, just that our AI was the best solution for their sprawling portfolio. After months of demos, audits, and negotiations, we sealed the deal. It was the kind of win that should have had my family shouting my name from the rooftops. But they didn't. When I called home to share the news, Mom's response was a distracted, "That's great." "Emily, but did you hear Ethan's being considered for VP at Harper Realty? Dad was worse. He suggested I come work for the family business if Horizon didn't pan out." Didn't pan out. My company was reshaping industries, and they still saw it as a hobby, like I was tinkering with toys in the garage. Ethan. He laughed when I mentioned the Dawson contract, saying, "Sounds like a lot of pressure. Sis, sure you're up for it." His words cut deeper than I let on, each one a reminder that no matter how high I climbed, I'd always be the little sister who didn't quite measure up. What hurt most wasn't their doubt, it was their blindness. I'd faced down skeptics in boardrooms, outsmarted competitors, and built a company from nothing, all while navigating a world that questioned my place in it. Yet my own family couldn't see it. They didn't ask about my late nights, my sacrifices, or the investors who'd once slammed doors in my face. They didn't know about the time I cried in my car after a pitch went south, or how I'd stood up to a venture capitalist who called my vision cute. Horizon wasn't just my job, it was my heart, my fight, my everything. And as I walked into that engagement party, I carried that fire with me, hoping, foolishly, that this time they'd see the woman I'd become. But some lessons I was about to learn come at a cost sharper than pride. The Dawson estate on Bainbridge Island was a spectacle, like something ripped from a magazine spread. Lush green lawns stretched toward Puget Sound, shimmering under the golden glow of sunset. A jazz band played smooth notes from a corner stage, their melody weaving through the chatter of guests in tailored suits and glittering gowns. Crystal chandeliers hung above, casting prisms of light across tables draped in white linen, each adorned with orchids that perfumed the air with a subtle sweetness. I stepped out of my Tesla, smoothing the hem of my red dress, chosen to radiate authority without shouting it. Lila Nguyen, my best friend and business advisor, adjusted her emerald green blazer beside me, her sharp eyes scanning the scene. "This place is next level," she whispered, a hint of awe in her voice. I nodded, my stomach twisting with a mix of hope and dread. This was Ethan's engagement party to Claire Dawson, and I wanted to believe it could be a fresh start for us. We followed a cobblestone path to the main tent, where waiters glided with trays of champagne. I searched for my parents or Ethan, expecting a warm wave or a shout of my name. Instead, I caught Claire's eye across the crowd. Her blonde hair was swept into a perfect chignon, her pale blue dress catching the light like sea glass. "Oh, Emily, you made it," she called, her smile tight, her tone carrying an edge I couldn't ignore, like I was a guest who'd shown up late. "Love the dress," she added, her gaze flicking over me. "So bold. The word landed like a barb, but I brushed it off, introducing Lila with a steady voice. Claire's eyes lingered on Lila's sleek outfit, her lips twitching. "You must join us for photos later," she said, already turning away. Something in her dismissal felt like a warning, a crackle of static before a storm. Lila and I moved through the crowd, her hand brushing mine in quiet support. We passed my parents, Judith and Robert, laughing with a group of men in dark suits near a marble fountain. Dad spotted me, his smile faltering for a split second before he waved me over. "There's my girl," he said, his one-armed hug stiff, like an afterthought. He introduced me to James Dawson, Claire's father, a tall man with a silver mane and a handshake firm enough to command a room. "Emily Harper," James said, his eyes lighting up. "Your AI platform's already saving us millions. Sarah Mitchell can't stop raving about Horizon." I felt a spark of pride, ready to dive into the conversation. But Mom cut in, her voice bright. "James, have you met Ethan? He's been working so closely with your team. The shift was instant. Ethan's name, Ethan's work, Ethan's charm." My moment snuffed out like a candle in the wind. Then came the seating chart. Lila and I approached a harried planner clutching a tablet near the tent's entrance. "Emily Harper, +1, I said, my voice calm despite the growing knot in my chest. The planner's brow furrowed as she scrolled, her fingers hesitating. "Harper, Harper," she muttered, then froze. "One moment, please." She scurried off, leaving us standing there, the hum of the party pressing in. 5 agonizing minutes later, she returned with a manager who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Ms. Harper, there's been a mix-up," the manager stammered. "We've arranged alternative seating for you." "Alternative?" My heart sank as she led us not to the elegant tables under the chandeliers, but through a side door, down a hallway, and into a bustling service area behind the bar. A folding table sat in the corner, hastily covered with a mismatched cloth. 2 chairs wedged between crates of glassware. "You can't be serious," Lila said, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. I stood frozen, heat rising to my face. This was where they thought I belonged. Before I could respond, Claire appeared, a champagne flute in hand, her smile gleaming with a satisfaction that made my skin crawl. "Is there an issue?" she asked, her voice syrupy, like she was savoring the moment. "Yes, there's an issue," I shot back, struggling to keep my voice even. "You've seated me, your fiancé's sister, behind the bar, like I'm part of the staff." Claire took a slow sip, her eyes never leaving mine. "Oh, Emily, we had to prioritize Daddy's business associates." "You understand, don't you? Besides, this spot's so, simple, unassuming." Her words dripped with condescension, each one a needle under my skin. Lila stepped forward, her jaw tight, but I held up a hand. "Claire, I'm the CEO of Horizon Innovations. Your father's company just signed a $25 million contract with me. And this is how you treat me." Claire's smile didn't waver. "Ethan approved the seating chart. He thought you'd be comfortable here." The betrayal hit like a punch to the gut. My own brother, knowing this, had let it happen. I turned to Lila, my voice low but steady. "I need a moment." She nodded, her eyes fierce with support, and stepped outside. Alone in that chaotic service area, surrounded by clinking glasses and hurried staff, I felt the weight of years of being overlooked crash over me. But something else stirred too, a fire, hot and unyielding. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't unassuming. I was Emily Harper. And I was done letting anyone, family or not, decide my worth. Have you ever had to swallow your pride just to keep the peace drop your story below? Because I was about to make a choice that would shake this perfect party to its core. Standing in that cramped service area, the clatter of glassware and hum of the party muffled behind me, I felt something snap into place, like a lock clicking shut, the sting of Claire's words, the betrayal of Ethan's silence. The years of being pushed aside, they crystallized into a single, unshakable truth. I was done being invisible. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a clarity I'd never felt before. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady as I dialed Greg Carter, my COO at Horizon Innovations. The line rang twice before he picked up. "Emily! Everything okay?" His voice was warm, concerned. "Greg," I said, my tone calm but ironclad. "I need you to cancel the $25 million contract with Dawson Properties, effective immediately." There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath. "Emily, are you sure that's a quarter of our revenue?" I glanced at the folding table, the mismatched cloth, the crates of glasses stacked around me like a cage. I've never been more sure. If they think I'm only worthy of sitting behind the bar, they don't deserve our technology. Draft the termination papers. I'll sign them Monday. I ended the call, my pulse racing but my heart steady. This wasn't just about a seating chart, it was about respect, about refusing to let anyone, even family, diminish what I'd built. I stepped back into the main tent, the jazz band's notes swirling around me, the chandeliers casting their golden glow. The crowd hadn't noticed my absence. But that was about to change. I spotted Claire across the room, laughing with a group of suited men, her champagne flute catching the light. Ethan stood nearby, his smile tight, his eyes darting as if he sensed the storm coming. I made my way to the head table, where James Dawson sat, deep in conversation with a silver-haired investor. Lila caught my eye from a distance. Her nod a silent, "I've got your back, Mr. Dawson," I said, my voice clear, cutting through the hum of the party. Heads turned, conversations faltered. James looked up, his brow creasing in surprise. "Emily, is everything all right?" I stood tall, my red dress a beacon in the sea of pastels. "No, it's not. Your daughter and my brother decided I belong behind the bar, not at your table. So I've made a decision. Horizon Innovations is terminating our $25 million contract with Dawson Properties. We don't partner with those who disrespect us." The words landed like a thunderclap. James's face froze, his glass halfway to his lips. Claire, who'd glided over mid-sentence, went pale, her flute trembling in her hand. "What?" she hissed, her composure cracking like thin ice. "You can't do that. Daddy's already integrated your system." Ethan stepped forward, his voice low, pleading. Come on, let's talk about this. It was just a seating mix-up." "A mix-up," I echoed, my voice sharp enough to slice through the tension. "You knew, Ethan. You let Claire put me behind the bar, like I'm some nobody. I'm the CEO of a company your father-in-law begged to work with. And this is how you value me." The table fell silent, the investors exchanging uneasy glances. James cleared his throat, his tone measured but strained. "Emily, this is highly irregular. That contract is critical to our operations. Can we discuss this privately?" I shook my head, my resolve like steel. "There's nothing to discuss. If your family thinks I'm invisible, you don't get to profit from my work. My team will ensure a smooth transition to whatever system you scramble to find. Good luck." Claire's face twisted, her voice rising to a near shriek. "You're ruining everything. This is my engagement party, and you're making it about your ego." I met her gaze, unflinching. No. Claire, you made it about mine when you decided I wasn't worth a seat at your table. I turned to Lila, who was already by my side, her eyes blazing with pride. Let's go, I said, my voice soft but final. As we walked out, I felt the weight of every eye in the room, but it didn't matter. I wasn't seeking their approval anymore. I was claiming my own. Have you ever had to walk away from something big to stand up for yourself? Drop your story in the comments. Because that night, I realized some things are worth more than money, and I was just getting started. The air outside the Dawson estate felt crisp, carrying the briny scent of Puget Sound as Lila and I stepped away from the tent. The jazz band's notes faded behind us, replaced by the soft crunch of gravel under my heels. My heart was still pounding, but it wasn't fear or anger. It was freedom. Like I'd shed a skin I'd outgrown. I'd just walked away from a $25 million contract, a decision that should have terrified me. Instead, I felt alive, unburdened, like I'd finally claimed the space I'd been denied for years. Lila squeezed my arm, her voice low but fierce. That was badass. Emily, you didn't just burn a bridge, you blew it up. I laughed, the sound surprising me with its lightness. Maybe I did, but it felt right. By Monday morning, the fallout was in full swing. My inbox at Horizon Innovations was flooded 19 emails from Dawson Properties, ranging from panicked to pleading. Sarah Mitchell, their VP of Operations, sent 5 alone, her tone desperate. Emily, we're struggling to find a replacement system. She wrote, your AI was a game changer. Can we talk? James Dawson himself called twice, leaving voicemails that danced between professional courtesy and barely veiled frustration. I didn't respond right away. I needed time to strategize with my team, to ensure Horizon came out stronger, not weaker. Meanwhile, I did something impulsive, something very un-Emily. I posted about the incident on LinkedIn, not naming names, but laying it bare how I'd been disrespected at a family event, how I'd chosen my worth over a lucrative deal. Respect isn't negotiable. I wrote, not in business, not in life. The post exploded, racking up thousands of likes and comments from strangers who'd faced similar slights, from women in tech who'd been underestimated, from entrepreneurs who'd walked away from toxic partnerships. I hadn't expected the response, but it lit a spark. My story was bigger than me now. The ripple effects came fast. 2 major firms, Cascade Solutions and Pacific Ventures, reached out, impressed by Horizon's tech and my stand. We've been watching your company. A Cascade exec emailed, your principles align with ours. Let's talk. Their portfolios dwarfed Dawson's, and their interest wasn't just business, it was respect. Back at the office, my team rallied, redirecting resources to pitch these new clients. Greg, my COO, grinned as he crunched the numbers. If we land even one of these, we're not just replacing Dawson, we're surpassing them. I nodded, feeling the weight of possibility. Horizon wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Then came Ethan. Tuesday evening. My phone buzzed with a text. Can we meet just us? Luciano's, 1 p.m. tomorrow. I stared at it, the old ache of our fractured bond stirring. He was still my brother, the kid I'd built sandcastles with on Alki Beach. Against my better judgment, I agreed, at Luciano's. He looked drained, his usual charm dulled, his tie loosened like he'd given up on appearances. He started, his voice cracking. I screwed up. Claire pushed for the seating thing, but I didn't stop her. I was jealous. You've built this empire, and I'm just Dad's shadow. His honesty hit me like a cold wind, raw, unexpected. "You let her humiliate me," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "You chose your image over me." He nodded, eyes down. "I know." And now Dawson's pulling back from Harper Realty because of the contract mess. Dad's furious. I wanted to feel sorry, but I didn't. That's not my burden. "Ethan, I protected what I built." "You should have protected me." A week later, another surprise, a call from my Aunt Clara, Dad's older sister, who'd been estranged since I was a kid. "Emily," she said, her voice warm but firm. "I heard about the party. You stood up to them, and I'm damn proud." She told me her story, how she'd built a real estate firm in the 80s, only to be dismissed by Grandpa and Dad as playing house. The parallels stung, but her pride in me felt like a lifeline. We made plans to meet for coffee, a small step toward rebuilding what our family had broken. Have you ever found an ally when you least expected it? Share your story below, because as I drove back to my office, the Seattle skyline glowing against the dusk, I realized the choices I'd made weren't just closing doors. They were opening ones I'd never dared to imagine. Driving home that evening, the Seattle skyline fading into a haze of twilight, I felt a quiet settle over me, like the calm after a storm. The chaos of the engagement party, the weight of that $25 million decision, the raw honesty of Ethan's confession. It all swirled in my mind, but it didn't overwhelm me. For the first time, I wasn't chasing anyone's approval, not my parents', not Ethan's, not even James Dawson's. I'd spent years running a race to prove I was enough, but sitting behind the wheel, the hum of my Tesla the only sound, I realized I didn't need to run anymore. I was enough. Horizon Innovations, with its 70 employees and a valuation soaring past $200 million, wasn't just a company. It was the proof of my worth, carved out of late nights, rejections, and a stubborn refusal to quit. And yet, it wasn't the contracts or the revenue that made me feel whole. It was the moment I chose me. Looking back, I saw how long I'd carried the weight of being unseen. Every missed mathlete competition, every polite nod at family dinners, while Ethan's stories took center stage, it had built a narrative in my head that my value depended on their recognition. But standing up to Claire, to Ethan, to the whole glittering facade of that party, shattered that lie. I wasn't invisible. I was Emily Harper, the woman who'd turned a $10,000 loan into an AI empire, who'd faced down smirking investors and built a team that believed in her vision. That night, behind the bar, when I could have swallowed my pride and sat quietly, I chose instead to demand respect, and in doing so, I found something better: self-respect, the kind that doesn't bend under pressure or beg for validation. This clarity sparked something new. At Horizon, I launched a mentorship program called Rise, aimed at young women in tech who'd faced the same doubts and dismissals I had. Women who'd been told their dreams were too big, their voices too soft, their place at the table unearned. Every week, I met with our first cohort of 25, sharing not just business strategies, but the harder lessons: how to set boundaries, how to walk away from toxic partnerships, how to stand tall when the world tries to shrink you. Their stories of being overlooked by colleagues, underestimated by families, echoed mine. And in their eyes, I saw the same fire that had carried me through. Helping them wasn't just work, it was healing, a way to rewrite the script of my own past. Lila, my rock through it all, became more than a friend. She was family, the kind you choose. Over coffee at our favorite spot in Pike Place, she'd tease me about my badass moment at the party, but her eyes held pride. "You didn't just stand up for yourself," she said once, stirring her latte. You showed everyone what it looks like to own your worth." Her words stuck, a reminder that my choice had rippled beyond me, touching my team, my mentees, even strangers who'd read my LinkedIn post. I wasn't just Emily Harper, CEO. I was Emily Harper, the woman who'd stopped apologizing for taking up space. Have you ever had a moment where you realized you didn't need anyone's permission to be you? Drop it in the comments. Because that realization hit me like a wave, and it's still carrying me forward. The road ahead wasn't about proving anything to my family or to Dawson Properties. It was about building, creating, and lifting others up with me. For the first time, I wasn't looking back to see if anyone noticed. I was looking forward, and the view was breathtaking. As the city lights of Seattle twinkled below my balcony, I sipped my wine, the weight of the past weeks settling into something solid, something true. That night at the Dawson estate, when I stood up and walked away from a $25 million contract, wasn't just about a seating chart or a family slight. It was about claiming my place in a world that tried to push me aside. It was about saying loud and clear that I deserved better not because of what I'd built, but because of who I am. Looking back, I see the lessons etched into every moment of that journey. Lessons that changed how I move through life, and I want to share them with you. First, set boundaries. Even when it's hard, whether it's family, colleagues, or clients, you have the right to say no to people who don't respect your worth. I could have sat behind that bar, smiled, and let Claire's sneer slide. But I chose to stand up. That choice cost me a contract, but it gave me something priceless, my dignity. What's one boundary you need to set today? Think about it. Second, believe in your value, even when no one else does. For years, I waited for my parents to see me, for Ethan to cheer me on, but their silence didn't define me. My work, my grit, my heart, they did. You don't need anyone's applause to know you're enough. And third, sometimes walking away is the strongest move you can make. Letting go of that deal with Dawson Properties hurt, but it opened doors to bigger opportunities, to partners who saw Horizon Innovations for what it was, a game changer. What's one thing you're holding on to that's dimming your light? Maybe it's time to let it go. These lessons aren't just words, they're a roadmap. I've seen them come alive in the women I mentor through Rise, in the new contracts piling up at Horizon, in the tentative steps my family's taking to rebuild what we broke. Ethan's apology, Aunt Clara's call. Even my parents' quiet reflection, they're proof that standing up for yourself doesn't just change you, it shifts the world around you. I'm not saying it's easy, it's messy, it's scary, but it's worth it. You deserve a seat at the table, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And if someone can't see that, walk away. Build your own table. Invite the people who lift you up. So, what about you? Have you ever had to stand up to someone close to you, to demand the respect you deserve? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. Hit that like button if this resonates. And if you're new here, subscribe for more stories about owning your power. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that they're worthy. Because trust me, they are. You are. Let's build a community that celebrates every single one of us, no matter where we're starting from. Thank you for listening, for being here, for showing up. Now go out there and take your seat. You've earned it.